Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make this edged beaded macrame bracelet, and this is the one that I've got here. So this is just the example that I'm going to show you today. I've used satin cord and then a combination of some larger and smaller beads there as well. It's going to look a little something like this. I just attached a clasp here using ribbon ends to finish it off nicely. So this is just the example that I've done, like I said, but you can really achieve so many different looks depending what materials that you use, because also you can mix up obviously the cord, but mix up what and how many beads you use as well. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. So if you want to learn how to make this pretty easy macrame bracelet, then stay tuned. So these are then the materials that I'm going to be using. First of all, we need a cord here. This is a 1mm satin cord, and I'm just using this nice light purple colour to go with my beads as well. You don't have to use this specifically, you can really use loads of different types of cords. And then we'll need our beads as well. In this case I have some 4mm rounds, so these are just some purple quartz gemstone rounds. And then here I have some 3mm metal spacer beads in silver. So this is just a combination of beads that I'm going to be using. You don't have to use this specifically. You can really choose whatever combination or even just a single bead in each space that you want to. And then we have our findings. So I have my ribbon ends. These are 13mm ribbon ends. They're going to fit perfectly with the materials that I'm using here to finish off the bracelet. And then I'm going to use my lobster claw clasp, extender chain, and then my jump rings. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So the lengths of cord that we'll need is 6 lengths of our satin cord here of about 1 meter each, and we'll be using these for the whole piece. Now then what I've done is I've taken all my lengths of cord and I'm working on my mini macrame board here. So I've just taken 3 lengths and attached them into one slot, and then the other 3 lengths and attach them into the slot right next to it. This is just to start off with, and using these macrame boards make doing macrame in general so much easier because you have the slots all the way around the board. Then what I've also done is on the bottom here, from each group I've taken one of them and I also put them into the slot there right next to each other. So those 2 that I put into the slot on the bottom are going to be the first holding cords. So what we then need to start doing first of all is making some square knots. So we need to make a square knot with each group of cords here. So just start with one of them. So you have the holding cord is the one that's attached to the board. Just focus on that for now, ignore the other ones as we're working with this group. What I'm going to do is make one square knot with these 2 loose cords that are going to be the working cords. So I just take my left one over the holding cord, then I take my right one over that, underneath everything in the middle, so under the holding cord there, and then up through the loop on the other side. And again, remember to avoid the other holding cord and the other working cords. Pull it all the way through. Tighten this up. So this is the first half of our knot. Then I need to take the cord from the right side over the holding cord. Then I take the left one over that and then underneath everything in the middle and up through the loop here. Again, ignoring the other cords from the other group. Tighten this, and there we have our very first square knot. So I've done that side, now I want to do the other side as well. The only thing is on this side I'm going to start with the cord on the opposite side here. So the left group of cords, I started with my left cord. On the right group of cords, I'm just going to start with my right cord. So I bring that over first, then I take my left one over that, underneath everything in the middle and up through the loop. And it doesn't really matter if you do this, I just prefer to do it because it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing how the knot ends up looking. And then we want to take the cord from the opposite side and finish off the square knot by making the other half. And tighten that all the way up. So you might be able to tell if you look closely on your knots that they basically look mirrored to each other now, because one side has a little loop comes over it where the working cord comes out below, and the other side the working cord kind of comes up above the knot there. So this is the first step. We now have these 2 square knots in place, and then what I'm actually just going to do is just reposition my cords here. So I'm just going to take one group out of the top slot and then move it into the same slot that the other group is in. So this is just really to get the knots that we've already done closer together. Make sure it's in there nice and tight so it doesn't come out, because what we need to do now is start making knots with other cords here. So we still have the 2 holding cords. coming down that are fastened in the board on the bottom. I'm going to also actually release them, so just take those out from the bottom, keep them to the side of that group that they kind of belong to, put them out to the side for that side, and then what we have is the working cards, the very outer ones on each side, and then the two middle ones on each side. So kind of these two that are wanting to cross over each other in the middle. These two are going to be the next holding cards. So what I'm going to do is make sure my knots are sitting right next to each other. Bring these down together, side by side, and place them down on the bottom of the disc in the same slot. Because these are just going to act as one holding card now. And then the next thing we need to do is make square knots around these two. And for that we're going to use the previous holding cards, so the ones that I just undid from the board. So basically the middle one from each of the groups. So you just do the exact same thing, make a square knot. Doesn't matter what side you start from, it's just personal preference really, because this is the middle one anyway. So I take my left one over, right one over that, underneath everything in the middle, up through the loop, and then tighten this right below the other knots that we've already done, and make the other half. And then this kind of tightens the whole thing in place and also brings the two sides together. So that's the first knot there. So what we want to do now is make a few more square knots just below each other here until we then need to make the next step. So now I've made my square knots here. What I have is I've ended up with 3 in total right underneath each other on these middle holding cords. You can obviously make more if you want to, and then have a different amount of beads as well. That's completely up to you, so it's kind of customizable that way. Now what we need to do is reposition our cords again. So I'm going to release the 2 holding cords, and then you'll find they're kind of naturally coming out to each their own side from the bottom cord there, or not. What I want to do is separate them out so we again have these groups of 3 cords just like we did originally, because we now need to make a knot on each side again with each group. So we'll just start with one of them. Just going to take my left one. So that means the working cord that we use to make these middle knots, I'm going to take the one on this side and bring it down and put it into the slot on the bottom of the disc, and then we need to make a square knot around this holding cord using the other 2 working cords from this group of 3 on this side. Before we do that though, we need to add the beads on the side. So in this case I've then added my beads to the outside cord, because we need to fill in the little gap that's going to be there. And I've taken first of all 1 3mm metal spacer beads, and then I've taken one of my 4mm rounds, it's going to be the middle one, and then another of my 3mm bead there, so it sits like this. So this is just what I'm choosing to do. Like I said, you can choose whatever you want to. You can use one larger bead or smaller beads. So basically just whatever you can kind of come up with to fill out that little gap. You just need to make sure the bottom of the beads, whatever you add there, is going to line up with the very bottom square knot that we made in the middle here. So then on this side I'm going to then take this cord where I had the beads on, that's the left one, bring that over the holding cord, then take the right one over that underneath everything in the middle, just to make a square knot just like the other times. Then tighten this all the way up, and then we need to make the other half to make it one full square knot, just like this. You can see the beads are now caged in nicely there, and they're nice and securely on there as well. So now that we made this one knot on this with this group of cords on this left side, I've taken out the holding cord, put it out of the way. Then we need to move over to the other side and do the exact same thing. So again, I take the working cord from that knot in the middle, bring that down. That's now going to be the holding cord. And then because it's on the left side, we need to start with, sorry, on the right side here. It was just on the left before where we used the left cord to begin with. Now we're on the right side, we need to start with the right cord. But before we do it, remember to then just add your beads. So I've added the exact same beads as I did on the other side. So I have 1 metal spacer bead on each side of that middle one, so the 4mm. And then I take the one with beads on, the outer one, and start off my square knot. And tighten it all the way up. So these two single square knots on each side are going to again sit right next to each other, just like the very first two that we did. And now that cages in those beads nicely as well. So that's this little section. We now need to reposition all the cards again. So keep them in these kind of groups of 3 continuously to help keep your cards organized. So put them out to the side. Then I'm going to release this current holding card that we just used. Also out to the right side, because it was the right side that I was working on. Then we need to go back to these 2 middle cards. So that's 1 working card from each side that I'm naturally kind of wanting to cross over in the middle. We need to go back to this middle section that we did up here with 3 square knots. So I'll bring these 2 together, attach them to the bottom of my disc on my board here, and then we need to make square knots with the 2 previous holding cards from the very last square knots that we just did. So just make a square knot again, and that then brings the 2 sides together. So the 2 kind of individual square knots that we just did, 1 on each side. And it also kind of makes it a little bit more cohesive. And again, like I said, the middle row of knots here, doesn't matter what side you start from, because it's the middle. I just prefer either side to be that where I start with a card that's the same side that I'm working on, just to make it look a little bit more cohesive. So, just like up here, I'm making my 3 square knots, just like that. You can see I have 3 now. And then reposition the cards, releasing my 2 holding cards, 1 out to the right, just naturally go in that, and then start with whatever side you want to. I'm going to take the left group again. The one that was just the working card is now the new holding card. Bring that down, and then we need to start making knots again. So I'll then take the outer card here on the left side, that's the furthest card to the left, and then I add on again my beads, the exact same that I did before. The 3 there, with the larger one in the middle. And then I'm just going to do the same on the other side, so that's ready. Add my beads onto that length of cord, push them all the way down, so we can just get on with the knot afterwards. Then on the left side here with this group of 3, just make your single square knot. And again, that then cages in those beads, so they're going to stay nicely in place. And just kind of be that embellishment along the side. Like that. Release the holding cord, put it out to the side, get it out of the way, so we can then take the cords from the other side and start working with. So again, the one that was the working cord from the knot in the middle is now the holding cord. And then make a square knot. Remember to start with the cord that's on the same side as what you're working on. So in this case I'm on the right side, so I'm taking my right cord and starting with that. Make your square knot, and then the other half here to make it a full one, and then cage in those beads as well. So that's now the second little section there, and as you can see it's building up quite quickly. I'm going to release the holding cord again, reposition my cards, and now we need to go back to the middle again. So this is the 2 cards, the ones that were just the working card, 1 from each side, that I naturally want to cross over. Bring those down, and these are now the holding cards again, where you then go back to the middle, using the 2 previous holding cards as the new working cards around those middle ones, and making a square knot. And again I'm going to make 3 here, and then that's the point where I'm ready to add my beads again, and then keep going like this. So you're kind of building them up, this bracelet, section by section like this, and just keep doing that until you reach almost the length that you need this to be. So now I then continue going here until I reach the length that I need my piece to be. Obviously take into account the clasp as well, it's going to take up some space. So what we need to do is then finish off the ends. Now first of all, what I need to do is prepare this little end section to be able to use inside the ribbon ends. So for that, what I'm going to do is, you can see here, the last knots that I just did was 1 on each side. just like we've done throughout. So if I were to continue with the pattern, I was going to do the section in the middle and then add the beads on the side. But I'm not going to do that. Instead of that, what I want to do is make some more knots on these individual ones. So just leave them like this. Keep making knots underneath these individual ones. So I already have one on each side. Then what I want to do is make some more right underneath that. So make another square knot here, and this is then 2, and then I want to make one more as well, because we need to make sure we have enough knots here to be able to fit inside the ribbon end without the ribbon end conflicting with the beads that we've added, because obviously they won't fit inside of it. So make one more here. So this is now 3. So that's the one side. I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. Remember that this is where we then start with the other cord. So on the right one we're starting with the right cord. And then again just make some more square knots. Also in this case another 2, so I have 3 in total. And then this will be just perfect to fit inside of the ribbon end that I'm going to be using. So I then have my 3 knots here on each side of them. And then you obviously want to do the same thing on the other end as well. Once you've then done that, we can then take and start using the ribbon ends and obviously get rid of the excess cord as well. Then now that I got both ends ready here with those extra knots, then I'm going to start getting rid of the excess cord. Now because I'm using a synthetic cord here, I can singe the ends, but if you're using a natural cord, you're going to have to use some glue. But in this case I'm going to use a ladder to singe them down and also secure them in place. So what I'm going to do is just cut them down, just take a few at a time here. And I'm going to cut them so I have about 1 to 2 millimeters left after where they're coming out from the last knot there. So like that. And then I'm just going to do these first. And then I'm going to take my lighter here, and obviously be careful because it's a naked flame that we're using and it does get hot. I'm going to take that and then just singe down the very ends that I just cut off. This then gets rid of the little ends, but also it kind of seals it in place so the knot isn't going to come undone. It's not too crucial anyway because this is going to end up inside the ribbon end, so it won't come undone because of that, but you also don't want it to come undone while we're working with it here. And it's just a nice and neat finish. Same with the other ones. And just singe those down as well. So you can either just push them in with your finger once you've kind of melted them, or you can use the lighter itself if you're kind of worried it's going to be a bit too hot. And just get rid of the last one there. So like I said, don't worry about it being too neat in this case, because it's all going to get hidden inside the ribbon ends. So there we go. That's now this end ready. So I'm going to then get my ribbon end. This is going to go straight onto the end of this. You can see it's going to sit like that. But what I also want to do is add some glue inside of here. And for that I'm just going to be using some E6000, mainly because it's a nice and strong glue, but also it's clear. So it'll dry clear, so if anything spills out a bit you won't really be able to see it too much. Just going to take this and then just use a toothpick to apply this with, because we don't need too much of this, just enough to get inside the ribbon end here. And I just want to get it along the sides, all the way up and down the sides there. And like I said, don't do too much, because we're going to clamp it down and it's just going to come spilling out anyway. It's just for a little bit added extra security to the piece. And whatever I have left over I'm just going to put on the very end of the piece itself. So the very end here that's going to go inside the ribbon end, it's going to give it a nice and strong bond together then as well. So something a bit like that. And then I'm going to take the ribbon end, put it on the end here of my piece, and then we need to start clamping this down so it's going to stay nice and secure. For that I'm then going to just take a pair of flat nose pliers, and then I like to hold my piece on the end here, try and hold it still, so while we clamp this down it's not going to move around too much. What I like to do is go in one place and then start gently clamping it down a little bit at a time, going from side to side. like that, instead of going in one place and then clamping it all the way down, because I feel like it's got more chance to move while you're doing that, and if you then it moves while you're clamping it down, it's going to end up being off center. So I prefer to do it this way to kind of try and keep control. And then once you feel like you're almost clamped all the way down, make sure it's still centered. Then I'm going to do my final squeezes to make it nice and secure. And then I also like to always just come in from the side, so the gap down the side isn't too large. Just like that. And then we have this end finished off nicely. So we then have that little loop on the ribbon end where we can attach whatever findings that we want to use. Of course you want to do the exact same thing on the other end, attach your findings, and then once you've done all that, your bracelet will be done. So now that I then finished off both ends here, and I've also attached my clasp, I then have the finished bracelet and it's ready to wear. So once you just use your clasp, close it up, and it'll look a little something like this. So give a really nice effect, and it's nice and simple, but at the same time gives a nice impact, and obviously you can give different looks depending on what materials that you use. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. It was a pretty easy macrame bracelet, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this macrame, either anklet or bracelet. It'd be quite nice for both, I think. And it looks like this. So you have your macrame part running around, and then I've added kind of fringes to one side of it, which is why I thought it would be quite a nice anklet as well, and a bracelet, because of how it's going to sit on both your ankle and your wrist then. So it looks like this. And this one I just finished off with a sliding knot,